Hey everyone, it's Christos here, aka the FRAG, and say hello to my little friend. This is Wendy the whale, because we're going to have a whale of a time right now, so you just hang around and stick around and we'll definitely have a good time. And also I want to introduce you to the Burger family. This was made by my darling daughter Stephanie. They're related to the Brady Bunch, but we don't know, we're still trying to track down their family tree. Okay, so today I'm here to review the Fender Stratocaster Player Series SSS. So before we get started, folks, I just want to make a few call outs. Firstly, I'm not getting endorsed, paid, given anything, any benefit in kind by the Fender Musical Instruments Corporation or Fender Australia. This is my guitar. I paid for it out of my money, so I'm giving an unbiased and voluntary review. Some of you, for those of you that are subscribed to my channel, and for those of you that aren't, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if you like what you see. If you don't like it, leave me a comment, but any comments left, do so with dignity and respect towards me and towards others. And if you ask any questions, I'm more than happy to get back to you as soon as I can. I also did another review of another Fender Player Series Stratocaster that I bought, which is in the buttercream and the black scratch plate. And that's got a humbucker, single coil humbucker configuration. What I'll do in the section below, I'll add links to that review and also a second review that I did after I did some modifications to it, and also some videos where I'm actually using that same guitar playing along to my favorite hard rock and metal songs. So with all the disclaimers and comments out of the way, let's get into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this up into a few sections. I'm not going to actually make any sound samples out of this because there's a lot of videos on YouTube where reviewers have actually done that, and they've used a lot more intricate software and they've edited it on their laptops or on their smartphones or whatever. I'm just using my smartphone, and I haven't got any other form of sound software or mixing and editing software that I can really enhance the tone. So I just want to go over this particular guitar. Then what I'm going to do, the second part of it, is things that you may want to look out for when you're buying these Fender Player Series, you know, good, and things that you maybe not so good, and also just discuss some of the modifications that I'm thinking of doing to this guitar and some that I've already done as well. So without any further ado, without further gilding the lily, let's get into it. So here is a 2021 Fender Player Series Stratocaster, and Player Series used to be known as the Standard Series, and they're manufactured in Mexico. Now 220 or 221 commemorates or marks the 75th anniversary of the Fender Musical Instruments Corporation, and just to let you know, on this particular model, you might be able to see it, but there's a nice little imprint on the back of the headstock marking the 75th anniversary. It just looks very classy. It looks very, very nice. So the actual body itself is made out of alder. You've got the 3 single coil pickups. They are, I believe, Alnico 5. And what Alnico stands for is aluminium, nickel, and cobalt. So they're the different magnet components that go into each pickup. And the higher the Alnico number, the more higher output that the pickup is. Usually it's measured by DC resistance, amongst other things. So these, when I measured them on my multimeter, they came out to around sort of 6-7 DC, which is not very high. So these pickups for, let's say, a clean or a bluesy sound, you know, they fit right in. But if you want to go more rock, hard rock, and definitely metal, I probably wouldn't recommend these. You've got a 2-point synchronized tremolo here, and this is where it gets interesting, because on a lot of the American models and even the custom shop models, I'm pretty sure they're trying to be period correct, they actually have the 6 screws, and I find that the two screw synchronized tremolo actually affords better stability, better tuning, and just feels more comfortable when you're using the tremolo. Not that I use it, the tremolo, hardly at all. The body's made out of alder. Like I said, you've got your 3 single coil pickups, you've got your volume, tone. Now the tone, I believe this one is your middle and neck pickup, and this one is your bridge pickup. You've got your 5-way selector switch. So in position 5, bridge, position 4, bridge and neck, bridge and middle position is middle, Position 2 is middle and neck, and position 1 is neck. So it's a double cutaway guitar, as you can see, input jack on the side. Then you've come to the neck. This looks like, the fretboard does look like it's rosewood, but the species of wood is actually called Palfero. And Palfero is a very interesting selection that Fender have gone through. There was a lot of regulatory issues at both Fender and Gibson especially. Gibson especially were in the media some years ago in terms of importing beyond certain quantitative restrictions, and the government in America put a clamp down in terms of the quantity imports that manufacturers can make for certain species of wood. But what I find with Palfero is it's out of the three darker woods, let's say Palfero, rosewood, and ebony, Palfero is the most diverse. You can get one that's very light brown, but then it's probably very smoky. In other words, it hasn't got very defined grain lines. But then you come across others that look so dark, it's ebony almost. And then you get others that look very, very, I've got a lot of grain texture. Whilst this one itself, especially down the lower frets, you can see that it's got a really nice grain to it. And looking at it, not even from a distance from close, you would think it is a rosewood fretboard. Now, how does it feel? How does it sound? It's interesting. I haven't really noticed a significant feel nor a tone, considering that there's so many variables that can affect the tone of an electric guitar. If you remember Johnson, that famous guitarist who recorded the White Cliffs of Dover or something like that, he used to change batteries in his pedals to try and get different tonal variants from his sound. But you'll find that with Palfero, it's not as porous as rosewood. So if you look at a rosewood fretboard, you'll see that there's little grain holes across the fretboard at times, whilst this is much more flatter, less porous, so you don't get those open grains in the wood, and it feels a bit more dense. But nothing that sort of stops me from saying, you know, I'm having difficulties or challenges playing with this particular fretboard. It actually feels really nice. You've got 22 medium jumbo frets. You've got a modern C neck. You've got a lovely skunk stripe on the back of the neck, and you've got this really classy, the typical 4-bolt neck plate or heel plate, and you've got that really nice classy F engraving, which is the Fender logo, and it's a 25.5-inch scale neck, and it's a 9.5-inch radius. So what does 9.5 inches mean? It means if you start at a point and you go up 9.5 inches and draw a circle, the circumference or curvature of that circle equates to the fretboard here. So you'll see that it's slightly curved. And the benefit with that is that the higher the radius, like 12 inches, like a Gibson, 16, even 20, what does that mean? It means it allows you to bend the notes much easier. So imagine if you're looking at a fretboard down that way, so it's like, let's say that's a fretboard, a 7 1/4 like your vintage Fenders, it's really curved. So if you've got strings that are going down, when you're trying to bend on this string, you can see the fretboard starts to get in the way of it. And what it does, it can deaden or drown out the note. But what happens is, as the fretboard gets flatter, because you're drawing a bigger circle, let's say a 16-inch circle, so you're going up 16 inches, drawing a more flatter circumference in comparison to a 7 1/4. Let's say, hypothetically, if this is a 7 1/4-inch fretboard, looking at it like down the barrel of a gun, by the time you get to 16 inches, it's literally flat. So the strings that are sitting across it, if you're bending them, they're just going up, and there's nothing in the way protruding against like the fretboard to drown out or deaden the note. So you've got your acrylic markers, and you've also got your dot inlays across the fretboard here. You've got your usual strap holders, although I've changed these, but I'll go over them. You've got your synthetic nut. I think on the Fender website it says synthetic bone or bone nut, but this is not a mother of pearl. This is a mother of toilet seat. You've got your standard Fender tuners, and on the back of them you've got the nice Fender logo, and you can see the Fender 75th anniversary stamp on there. And I must say, this particular guitar, it just plays really, really nice. Looking at it's like I said, it's 22 medium jumbo frets. Looking at it, you would think that they were jumbo frets. I mean, they're that big, and they feel really, really nice. So you can really, you can really bend a note as well. The machine heads are a 14:1 ratio. So in other words, when you turn the machine head 14 times, the string holder turns once. It makes one revolution. So what does that mean? You sometimes hear machine heads actually are 18:1, 19:1. Bass machine heads can be like 26:1. So the higher the ratio, the better fine tuning that you have. Because, and I'm accentuating the example here. If you have a 14:1, you turn it and the string holder will turn much more. Whilst if you have an 18:1, you have to actually turn more times to get the same rotation. So what happens is, with a high ratio machine head, you can actually turn it and get much, much more fine tuning. You've got a vintage string tree here, and when you look at it, it's actually curved. It's actually curved because that way it prevents the string from really racking up against the sharp edge there and potentially breaking. And you've got your truss rod adjustment slot there. So in the neck of a guitar, there's a metal rod that goes all the way down. It's called a truss rod, and you can access it with this. And I urge you guys to buy it. It's a 3/16 Fender truss rod adjustment screw. I got it from Amazon for about $15, $16, I think $20 or something like that. If they're selling it at the shop, I urge you to have this chucked in. The guitar does come with its own Allen keys, but it's an L-shaped. And what you find is that by the time you insert the L-shaped Allen key, it's literally touching against the truss rod slot there. And one thing you don't want to do is scratch it against the finish, which would look very unsightly and could potentially affect the resale value of the guitar. So that's pretty much it, and you've got the back plate there of the tremolo. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to discuss some of the things you may want to look out for when you're buying a Player Series like this. I mean, for me, I bought a Fender Stratocaster for $899 Australian dollars, which on the Australian Fender Australia website, the recommended retail price for these is about $1,400. I mean, I got this for $899 for a Fender, an iconic electric guitar, and it's a bit out of tune, but and it just plays really, really nice. Now, one of the biggest things you may want to look out for is when you're buying a guitar in general, and I came across this with my Fender Player Series precision bass, run your fingers down the edge of the fretboard. Now with my precision bass, the Player Series that I bought, it was pretty sharp on some of them. Now I've had it for about a year, and I'm noticing now that the edges are slightly starting to sort of dull out. So it's not as bad as when I first started playing, like day one, for example. So do that, because if you're a shredder and you're moving really fast up the fretboard, the last thing you want to do is do something like that, and you could potentially cut and bleed open one of your fingers. But thankfully this was done really, really nice. I can't complain. I can't feel it's like a real professional setup. One thing I did notice about this guitar was when I took it home, it was really buzzing. You're getting a little bit of buzz at the end, but literally as I strummed it, it was like buzzing throughout the whole vibration of the string. So what I did was I just basically used the truss rod to alter the contour of the neck and just raise the string action just a little bit. But I think you'll find that because these frets are fresh and you can see some scuffing on them or something like that, as you bend the strings on the frets, eventually that bending movement will eventually get rid of that surface layer of crud or something, whatever it is. So that's okay. Sometimes you may realize that that the position of the neck may be too far up. So by the time you get here, the distance is so high between the string and the frets that no matter how low you go with your bridge saddles, it's still quite a bit of distance. So there's something that you can compensate that, and it's called a heel. Oh, I forgot what it's called. It's basically an angled piece of maple, and what you do, you remove the neck and you just put it in between the neck and the heel, and basically what it does, it just lifts the neck a little bit that way, so that way it allows the string, the fretboard to sit closer to the strings. But thankfully that wasn't the case here. And then, you know, what you may want to do is look around the guitar just to see if there's any imperfections or flaws or anything like that. With these, because these are a bolt-on guitar, it's always good to see, especially around here, sometimes you do get the occasional Fender where there is a bit of a gap, which is not really good, because even though you've got 4 screws securely tightening the neck to the body, sometimes you might play and the neck might move a little bit out of joint, which can affect the tuning, the intonation, and so forth. So that's just a few things that you may want to look at. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go over some of the modifications that I'm looking at making on this guitar. Oh, actually, before I do that, one thing I did find was the G string. I'm using 10 to 46s, so I've gone up from 9 to 42s. Now with 10 to 46, when I'm tuning the G string, I can hear it bouncing like tick, tick, tick. And sometimes if I bend it, it can go out of tune. So there's a few things you can remedy this without going for the jugular, which is to completely remove the nut. And you know, there's a lot of good YouTube videos, Stu Mac, Philip McKnight, and so forth, that show you how to remove the nut and install a new one, like a Graph Tech nut is probably the one to go for. There's a few things you can do. Firstly, the most cost-effective one is if you're ever in a situation where your strings are bouncing in between a slot, that's because the slot is not wide enough to accommodate for the string. So this would have been with the smaller gauge, so this is 10, 13, 17. This probably would have been a 16 gauge with a 9 to 42s, could have even been a 15 gauge or 15 microns, which would have been easier to fit through that. And at the factory, they would have slotted the nut to accommodate for 9 to 42s, which is the standard gauge packaged by Fenders pretty much 99% of the time. So what you can do is, if you get a lead pencil and just shave some of the lead or the graphite and mix it in with some Vaseline, then just get a little toothpick and just apply it on the inside the slot, and then just run the string a bit over it. Eventually it'll leave that lubrication for quite a bit of time, and then that should solve the case. If that still doesn't work, then what you might want to do is buy some nut files and just slowly file it, but in the direction that the existing slot is. So if the slot is like that, you don't want to be filing down. Only if the slot is going down should you file down. In other words, you should file in the direction that the slot has already been carved with or grooved with. So that was one of the things that I've noticed. So I'm probably going to stick with 10 to 46s. I don't think I'll go to 11s, and I definitely won't go back to 9s because it's too light for me. So now I'm going to talk about some of the things that I'm looking at doing. What I've done here is I've replaced the vintage brooch saddles with a set of Goto made in Japan stainless steel. Now on my previous Fender Player Series, the Buttercream, I used brass, and the brass ones are covered in chrome, but they look much smoother, whilst the steel ones have more of a matte finish rather than a gloss finish, which is what the chrome the brass ones have. And the difference between brass and steel is that the steel will give you a much more punchier, brighter sound. And I really want to upgrade this guitar to use it for more real metal type music. So I've already changed them. I've initially set the intonation on, and intonation basically means that from the open E to the E here, which is 12 notes later if you take into account flats and chops, it should be the same. Now some people test that by either pressing down on the note or playing the harmonic. So by the time you get here, it should be an A as well. So the way to fix that, if you've got problems, if you're playing on the 12th fret and the 12th fret is actually sharp compared to the open string, If it's sharp, move it back. If it's flat, move it forward. So flat, move the bridge saddle forward. If it's sharp, move it back until you get it right. So you might have to do it a few times, and there's a screw on the back of the tremolo that when you turn it clockwise or anti-clockwise will move the bridge saddle back and forth. The thing I like about these is the grub screws don't pierce against my palm, whilst the vintage saddles that came stock with the Fender, they're just basically molded steel, and they sit lower, so the grub screws protrude, and they were really hitting my finger and scraping against my palm there. Also, with these Gotto bridge saddles, they've got a slot in them, so the string sits nice and steady. Whilst with the stock bridge saddles of the Fender, there's no slot, so the string can actually move around, bounce around, and which creates an uneven distance between the strings. Whilst these, they're a direct replacement. They don't make the string sit further inwards or further outwards. The exact dimensions of the Fender Player Series bridge saddles that come standard from the factory. I should also mention that these are 250K pots as well for the electrical engineers out there. Some of the other changes that I'm going to do is I'm also going to include a Seymour Duncan hot rail bridge and a Seymour Duncan hot rail neck. And I've also gone ahead and changed the strap holders. I've got Jim Dunlop, just the strap holder. I haven't actually bought the strap mechanism, but the strap lock mechanism, but just the strap holder. I might change the string tree to something that's a bit more friendly, and it's more lubricated and moves easier. You can buy string trees with roller balls, so the string sits underneath the roller ball, and as you turn it, the ball turns in movement with the string. And I'm also going to change the Fender tuners to the Fender locking tuners. And the good thing about the locking tuners is, even though they're not made in the States or Germany anymore, they're made in Taiwan, they do come with a better ratio. They're actually an 18:1 ratio. And another good thing is that 3 of the posts are actually smaller in height or lower in height. And the thing is, when your string comes off the nut, that is called a break angle. And what you want to do, you want to make sure that the string is actually going down as far as possible, because that really creates a good, secure connection to the nut. And the thing is, if the string's too flat, it can buzz, it can fall out of tune, it just doesn't play well. So that's known as a break angle. So where the nut is, you really want the string to be going down towards the posts. And the locking tuners, the Fender locking ones that I'm looking at upgrading, these last 3 at least are actually lower. So that way it forces the string to go low. But you don't really care with the B and the high E, because you've got the string tree anyway. And the good thing is that they're a direct replacement. So you can see at the back of the machine heads there's no screws or anything. So what you do is, when you remove the nut from here, this tuner just falls out, and there's 2 sort of like 2 teeth that connect into the body of the back of the headstock. So there's actually holes drilled at the Fender factory, and the locking tuners fit right in. It's a direct replacement, and like I said, they've got better tuning ratios as well. What else would I be doing to this guitar? Other than that, it's that's pretty much it. And one thing I will say is, I also bought myself the Fender case. So this is the case that fits Fender Stratocasters amongst other models as well. It's a locking case as well. It's got a really nice, comfortable handle, and inside, if I can just swing this around, you've got your little opening there. You can put all your stuff there, and it sits really nice, and it fits really snug and really, really comfortable. And I got this for about an extra $250. So all up, I've got this for about $11.49, the whole setup, which I think is just absolutely really, really good value. and it resonates really nice for a bottom of the because let's face it, these Player Series sit more towards the you're sort of getting towards a Squire, and even Squire guitars are very good quality before you get to the Japanese and the USA made, and obviously the custom shop. And even without plugged in, it just resonates really nice. So yeah, I just want to say thank you very much, guys. I hope that you find this video and my videos very informative. Like I said, hit the subscribe button, hit like, leave any comments respectfully, and when I upload this I'll also include some of the links as well. So keep rocking, keep playing. Obviously the world's going through a crazy time right now, and playing a musical instrument is a great release. Love, light, bless you all, and thank you very much. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.